Welcome to day 473, Sex, Drugs, Rock and Roll, and Food. Today is a 2-minute video of Eric Ripert's YouTube show called On the Table. And he's got several segments of this where he invites people, usually chefs or foodies, come over and they make a dish together and they talk. And if you don't know, Eric Ripert is one of my favorite chefs. He is so stinking elegant, and his food highly refined. He's got lots of cooking demonstrations videos on YouTube if you look him up. Very simple but elegant, and the way he plates is just effing astonishing. He is highly regarded as a very technical chef amongst chefs. You know you're doing good when other chefs think you're the shit. And he also has really, if you don't follow him on Instagram, if you're into Instagram, he has a great Instagram page. He'll do little videos of like 1-minute videos of him prepping a food and the full recipe and everything, and it's just pretty crazy. And I paired it with Anthony Bourdain, you know, there's a lot of lessons in here, and this video is from 2012, so we all know what ultimately happened to Anthony Bourdain committing suicide. How long ago was that? I mean, time flies. Maybe 3-4 years ago. When did Anthony Bourdain commit suicide? And it took everyone by surprise because he had such a great life and all that stuff. So I chose this video because it's a very funny, enjoyable video to watch. It gives you kind of this behind-the-scenes access to the workings of Anthony Bourdain as well as Eric Ripert. And there are things that I knew that was going to come up. And so part one that I found really funny was Eric goes, like, Anthony's not quite as like precise in the kitchen as I would prefer, but I'm sure it's gonna be delicious. And then switches over to Anthony Bourdain, and he's like, yeah, Eric Ripert is up here, and Eric Ripert is way up here, and I'm very comfortable down here in my cooking skills, and he's not gonna be calling me for recipes anytime soon. So that was a funny joke, and I loved how they framed it because they shared his story, Anthony Bourdain's story first. He started cooking because he liked kind of like the lifestyle of the chefs, and then he mouthed off to the seasoned chefs who were way much better than him, so they tore him a new one. So he says, you know what, I'm going to go to Culinary Institute of America, which is probably the best cooking school in America, and he apparently did really well. He was also a chef, and so he graduated CIA with honors, and so little did I know, I mean, Anthony Bourdain is really a classically trained chef who actually did really well in school. But he developed this horrible drug habit, and he went sober. He had to go to rehab. He got sober, but he had screwed up his entire career, right? Because he was this up-and-coming young chef. He went after the money, and with all the money comes all of the other things, including a drug habit. And he said, I just had to start all over again. I had to start as a line cook, a buffet cook. He took any job that was available to him. And I'll show you in another video, because there's a lot of life lessons in this. And then when he wrote Kitchen Confidential, he was 44 years old. I'm 48. He was 44 years old. And he said overnight that book changed his life. And he went from a broke, barely getting by 44-year-old chef, like not paying his credit cards or just even barely the minimum, to an overnight Wonder Boy success, Food Network calling him, and we all know what happens after that. Like, his fame skyrockets. So it was interesting that even though he was a highly trained culinary chef, this is lesson number one, like, there's still a hierarchy. There's always someone better than you, you know? And Eric Ripert, it was just so, that moment was so funny for me. He's like, yeah, Anthony's not quite as technical as I would prefer. He just kind of was like, okay. But at the end of the day, it tasted good. So I have seen this in the operating room amongst surgeons. You know, I've gone to conferences and watched videos and seen surgeons operating, and I'll go, wow, you're a disaster, dude. You're a fucking disaster. You know, your OR's a mess. It's loud. You can't hear. You can't control people. No one respects you. You don't start on time. You don't end on time. You're technically very sloppy. Your stitching is horrible. Your knot tying is a mess. And believe it or not, the patients survive. Chances are, you know, they're going to lose weight. And then other times, I've gone to other conferences where I watch a surgeon operating, and I know, because I've had enough of the experience, where I go, that is fucking elegant, you know? And I was a very good surgeon, you know? I had other surgeons come visit me, watch me do a single incision sleeves and stuff, and they're like, wow, you're really good. And then I've had experiences where I've gone to conferences and I go, damn, you made that look easy. You made that knot tying look easy. You made that dissection curve easy, you know. And when you have someone who's an expert, and you know, a lot of you guys are teachers and accountants and lawyers, and you know when someone does great work, you kind of go, wow, I didn't even think, like, I'm good, but that was crazy, you know. There's always another level. There's always someone else there who's more studied, more dedicated. I interviewed this guy who I really wanted to hire, and he ended up having visa problems. He was a nice guy, very well read, and he talked about, when I interviewed him for the position, he talked about how he got such high grades and scores on, and you know, we have this huge textbook of surgery that's like this big. And I said, how'd you score so high on your exams? And he goes, well, you know the textbook? I was like, yeah. And it's a reference book. Like I've never, you know, I might have read maybe 10 pages of it. And he's like, I memorized it. He goes, I read it 3 times. I said, you read it 3 times? He goes, I read it 3 times. I was like, I read 3 pages and you read it 3 times? It's this big. And he went to like a really hard fellowship. He did this fellowship in Pittsburgh that, I mean, they did 450 cases or 500 cases a year. And he's like, no, we took all the bad cases, all the bad stuff. And I was just like, wow. So I knew this guy was going to be technically like better than me, and hopefully, but we couldn't. He went to med school in the Cayman Islands, and so because he was from the Cayman Islands, so that was a problem. Anyway, okay, so there's always another level you can take your life to, you can take your passions to, you know. When I was younger, I was like a really good artist. And this is my artwork here. That's a lithograph. These are relief prints here, and I did those in college. But and I did it my senior year, my last year in college, and I had an art professor who was like, "You need to go to art school, and you need to apply for our fine arts program." And I was like, "Oh no, I'm going to med school." And they're like, okay. But even there were people in art school, at university, where I was like, wow, they're really good. Like, you can really draw. And it wasn't like I had the skills, but technically, like I just didn't have I just didn't have the desire for it. So one thing is you can have the skill, but you might not have the desire. You know what I'm saying? So Anthony Bourdain, for example, in this video, he says, seriously, if you could play the guitar like Jimi Hendrix, would you really be a chef? And I'm pretty sure Eric Ripert didn't answer, but I'm pretty sure Eric Ripert would have said yes, because that's really, he's elevated his craft. But what made Anthony Bourdain great is that he graduated with honors in cooking school, but he has a certain way of looking at his profession that made him this huge icon, because he was fearless about revealing secrets in Kitchen Confidential, and then traveling the world and eating foods and stuff like that. And I was like, you know what, I'm kind of the same way. Like, I graduated with honors, and I was intern of the year and chief resident of the year, and I tested well, and I had this level of surgical proficiency. But then there were people above me, like Eric Ripert, who I was like, wow, you are technically like amazing. But then I had this sort of gumption and entrepreneurialism and creativity, and my artwork and everything like came together, where I could produce books and create content, and I could take this whole thing to a different level. The reason why I'm telling you this is step number 2. When you see someone doing a job that's better than you, or more gifted than you, and more talented than you, be inspired. Don't beat yourself up. Don't be like, oh my God, I'll never be as good as Eric Ripert, so I shouldn't even try. Like, you bring to the table other gifts and talents that the other person doesn't have. Like Eric Ripert in this video says, Anthony has like amazing ways of talking and speaking and writing and thinking about things that I could never do. You know, like, he has such an interesting turn of phrase and how he sees things and says things. He's very seasoned interviewer, you know, a guest and stuff, and Eric's pretty shy in front of the camera. So when you see someone who does something really great, be interested. Be like, wow, how are you doing that? You know? But I will tell you, when I saw another surgeon like operate a certain way, and I was like, okay, I'm at a crossroads in my career. I have to decide, like, am I going to take on these tough surgeries, these challenges? Am I going to really push forward, or what am I going to do? Or am I just going to keep, you know, doing my program? I really prefer doing the talking and educational stuff. And I really don't want to learn about robotics, and I really don't want to take on harder cases and do all this other shit, right? And so I had to make I think I subconsciously made that decision, you know, when I saw that surgeon operate that way. I was like, damn, like, he's good. But if you get more interested, and see, sometimes people get like, they'll see someone who's hit goal weight, and they're like, oh, good for you, but I couldn't do it. I have this problem, I have this struggle. As opposed to saying, how did you do it? What were your tips and techniques? What did you do? You know, what could you do? In the early days of laparoscopy, it was a big no-no to put sponges inside the belly cavity, because everyone was scared you could lose them. And I had this idea, and I remember the first time I did it, my attending about shit his pants. We hit some bleeding, and I think I was a 4th year resident, and I said, turn off the music, you know, because the music was blaring. My attending he was a good attending, but, you know, and I said to the nurse, I said, I want you to count sponges in the belly, just because I have a whiteboard that they count instruments and stuff. and it was a sin to put in a sponge inside a belly in laparoscopy. And I said, I want you put sponges in the belly, and because we were bleeding, man, and my attending was about to open the belly, and I said, no, give me a second. And I said, I'm going to put a sponge in the belly. He was like, you're fucking crazy. I said, nope. So count how many there are, right? And so I said, 1 in the belly. And he's like, how are you going to get the sponge into the belly? And I said, I've been thinking about this. And I unraveled the sponge. I grabbed the instrument, and I grabbed it on the very end of the instrument, not in the middle, on the end of the sponge, and I will throw it down the trocar, and it goes in. And I said, show me up in the diaphragm up here. I need to see the diaphragm because the instrument's going through, and I have to have enough room because the sponge is like that long. I have to have enough room to put it all the way up, and not hit the spleen, right? And I push it in, and then I let it go, and I grab the back end and I push it through. And my attending goes, shut the fuck up. My attending's like, what? And we were bleeding up there, right? And I said, sponge number 2. And I unraveled the sponge, and I just did it again. Sponge number 3. And the nurse is like freaking out, like, oh my God, put 3 and push it up. And I think I pushed like 5 sponges in there. And I pushed it down, and then I took this grasper, and I just held pressure. I held pressure. And I was like, I said, we're just going to wait. Got the suction and like started sucking the blood, and they were irrigating and suctioning and irrigating because that's all they used to do. And I was like, stop irrigating. You're making it worse. Just put on the sucker, and I'm going to suck up all this blood, and we're just going to wait. And I sat and waited for and then I told the nurse, I was, give me 5 minutes, right, on the clock. And she told me when 5 minutes was up. And by this point, sponges are all matted together, full of blood. And I know my attending was like, how the fuck are you gonna count? And so it stopped the bleeding. We continued the case laparoscopically, finished. And at the end, I had to pull out these sponges, and they're knotted like this. And so I grasped them, and I was trying to take it out, and it won't go through the trocar. And I was like, turn the camera, show me the sponge. And I was like, okay, I see the problem here. It's not coming out. So then what I had to do was, there are ties that hold the trocar in, and I untied it, and I pulled out the whole trocar, and the sponge came out, and when it came out, it's stuck like this, and then you take the trocar, and when you take the sponge out, all the insufflation inside the belly goes, like, blew up on my face, like, and I had all this blood and splatter on my face, and all I had was my little glasses. I didn't have complete protection. So I learned my lesson pretty fast, and the belly like deflates like that. And I was like, uh-oh. So I put the trocar back in really fast, and it inflated, and I did it, it collapsed, and I did it 3, 5 times. And by the 5th time, like, you get the alarm, beep, 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 beep. Like, you're out of gas, you're out of insufflation gas. And so, but my attending was like slightly peeved, but slightly happy. And the nurse had to run and go change out the gas tanks and stuff, and that's always fun. And we had to wait, and then I said, like, double count the lap sponges. They double counted. We had them all out, and we closed up shop, and the patient did fine. Laparoscopically did not have to open. There are times in your life where you have this kind of like, okay, I'm gonna try, like you've got to step up, right? So there was a time when, Anthony Robbins says, Anthony Bourdain says, I had this little article I wrote, and it was about what's happening in the restaurant industry, and my mother, and no one would publish it, right? And then my mother had this stupid idea, this insane idea that she would send it into the New York Times. And then that it had no chance of working, but little did I know, a week later, I get a call from the New York Times that they were going to run my article. And then this publishing company contacted me and offered me this ridiculous amount of $50,000 to write a book. At the time, it sounded like a like ungodly amount of money because I was broke. And why would anybody give me $50,000 to write a book? But I did it, and my life changed. You understand what I'm saying? So in your life, there are moments you have to think about, man, Doc's right. I had this opportunity and I stepped away. I cowered back. I decided not to do it. I decided not to go for the promotion. I was self-conscious. I was whatever. You know, I was insecure. I was dealing with imposter syndrome, etc. And, next tip, when you look back at your life, they often say hindsight's 20/20. And there's in today's video, they talk about, this was 2012, so they're talking about Nigella Lawson, who is that British chef who's very pretty, and he's like, you're working on this new show. He goes, oh my God, the set's amazing. It looks like something from a sci-fi movie, and you're with Nigella Lawson. So I'm sitting there thinking back in my head, because back in 2012, I was still watching television, a little bit of television. And I think I remember the show. Who remembers that? And Anthony says it's going to be a cooking competition show. Who remembers there was a show on ABC where it was called like The Perfect Bite or something like that, where the chefs had to create this one perfect bite. And it had Nigella Lawson, and I totally forgot it had Anthony Bourdain on it, but I think it did. But I'm pretty sure that was the show they're talking about, and how Nigella is like amazing but kind of weird and sexy. So when you look back at your life and they're hinting at this new show, now you can say that's what that was, right? So he said yes to this sort of opportunity. That TV show, I don't think made it more than one season, maybe 2 seasons. Maybe there was a second season of it. It was short-lived and introduced American audiences to Nigella Lawson. So, but the last tip is the one I wanted to talk about, because all of us are sitting there, when Anthony Bourdain died, if you knew who he was, you were really saddened by it, because seemed like he had a great life. He had so much going for him and everything like that. And if you've ever watched any of his cooking shows and No Reservations, it's really like, it's very different than what was on TV at the time. But the part that I want to talk about, and the reason why I chose this video, is there's a small snippet where Eric Ripert says, Anthony Bourdain is my best friend. And Anthony says, if Eric calls you to do something, you show up. Even if he tells you to bring, some duct tape and a stolen car, show up. So all of us were touched, well, most of us were touched by Anthony Bourdain's passing by suicide. But when you look back at this video and you go, and Eric Ripert says he's my best friend, and you realize that even though I feel bad about Anthony Bourdain's passing, it is nothing compared to Eric Ripert's loss. This idea that he could have called me at any time. You understand what I'm saying? Like, it hits much closer to home. Like, you have these icons and these celebrities who you didn't know were best friends, and you put yourself in Eric's shoes and we all feel that the world lost a bright light, but it was, for Eric, it was something very different. It was losing his best friend. It just puts things into perspective. it really puts things into perspective, especially right now as we open up. We see what's happening with the pandemic, and I mean, everything that you guys are seeing with these mass shootings and guns and violence and stuff, it is, trust me, it is a repercussion of the last 2 years of, leading up to the pandemic, the divisiveness of our country. It took a mental toll, and I don't think Erica would mind me telling you all this, but she's going to New Mexico for 2 funerals. One was a childhood friend who shot himself with a gun, and he was like 32 years old. And the other one was her serious relationship before me, which she was with this guy for 6 years. So basically from the age of 16 to 22, he hanged himself. So we're spending this month talking about stepping into your power, just embracing the power, step into it. And the first half of the month, we really had some hard-hitting stuff. Motherfucker, get up, do this, no one fucking cares. It's hard stuff. But part of stepping into your power, partially today was like saying, hey, these other people are great. I'm never going to be as good of a surgeon as this guy, but I have other talents that I bring. And it was funny because when I retired, when I walked away from surgery, I had so many surgeons reach out to me and say, you're throwing away your career. You're young, you're up and coming. We all liked you. You had, you could do, so we want to, they I don't know if I've ever said this, but right before I retired, they wanted to put me on the board, the society's board that was going to look into social media and handle social media, and how we could use social media to help with patient care and stuff. And I was like, and I didn't do it because I knew I was going to quit, but also they said, we want you to come to our meeting and tell us about Twitter. This was 2017. They wanted me to tell them about Twitter. And I said, Twitter? Twitter's dead! So in other words, they saw things in me, that talents and skills and abilities that they valued, but I was like, I didn't particularly value. I mean, I knew it, but I just didn't want to be a part of it. I don't know if that makes sense, what I'm saying. So there are people who look at you in your life and your journey and are like, how did you lose 100 pounds without surgery? How did you hit goal weight? How did you afford, how did you stop the emotional roller coaster? All sorts of stuff, and it's ourselves. It's our own demons that for whatever reason says, no, I'm not good enough. No, I can't do it. Oh, they can do it, but I can't do it. And part of embracing your power is to be able to go, all right, I need to find this balance. I need to find this happiness. I need to create this life. What if Anthony Bourdain, I was talking to Erica, and she was telling me about her friends, and I was like, you know what their problem was? I don't know, drugs, depression, suicide, and I was just like, no, they didn't have a Dr. V in their life to call them out on their bullshit and to love on them and tell them that they're able and they're talented and they have a lot to live for. And not to be rude, but what if Anthony Bourdain had somebody in his life like Dr. V, who would be, or like my group or my mastermind? If I ever felt bad, I would just call Steve Hoy, and I was like, Steve or Aaron, I'm hurting. What do I do? Maybe, and I don't mean to. I'm not dismissing depression by any means. So please don't misunderstand what I'm saying. But what if he just had somebody? What if Anthony Bourdain had somebody in his life who was like, man, like, you'll be okay. Just sit with this hurt. Sit with this a little bit. You know, you have so much to offer. You're an amazing human. And it only resonates when they know you don't blow smoke up their ass. Does that make sense? Like when Steve Lloyd says, Doc, you're amazing, everybody loves you, he's not blowing smoke up my ass. He really thinks I'm amazing, and he really thinks everyone loves me. And so when they say, dude, you're fucking up, I pay attention because that means I'm really fucking up, because they wouldn't waste their time otherwise. Does that make sense? So maybe, and I don't know, Anthony Bourdain maybe never had anyone like that. So how valuable is this tribe to you? How valuable is your AP? How valuable are the relationships? How amazing is San Diego going to be? You know what I mean? You have to think about that. Now, I will leave you with this one last thing, and it's been bugging me. I have said, since Anthony Bourdain died, have you noticed no one has stepped into that role? And some people have tried, and I'm sitting here going, Gordon Ramsay's trying. He's done some shows where he's traveled and cooked, and it's just not the same. Because Gordon, you know, he has his restaurants and his brand, and it's just not the same. I mean, Anthony Bourdain is staying up all night, just getting schnockered and showing up hungover the next day, you know. So I've been bugged and bothered because I'm like, I want to step into Anthony Bourdain's role. Could you imagine if somehow I was able to have the connections and worked out a no reservations with Dr. V? That shit's been bothering me. If you guys really want to know the truth, you know, like this shit's been bothering me. But that only comes together for you when you start to step into this role and you believe. You first have to believe. And maybe I don't believe yet, but maybe y'all believe for me. You know, like y'all like, Doc, you can do it. You should do it. Make that your goal. You could totally do it. You'd be so interesting, so good at it. Maybe I don't believe it yet. And that's why maybe I haven't taken the steps required or needed or whatever. I don't know. But it's been bugging me. I'll tell you. It's been bugging me. And I've been sitting around waiting to see who's doing it. And no one's doing it. Maybe that's the next thing. A little bit of a rambling talk today, but I want you to think about this in your life. Like, I want you to start really stepping into this. And you never know what will happen. You know, we're halfway through this month, this idea that it's time to embrace your power. Time to go. Have you done it? Have you started? Or, well, 6 months from now, you're going to regret not doing anything. Love y'all very much. Have an amazing day. Told you it'd be a short one. Bye, guys.